Friends, we are privileged today to have before us one of the most profound and esoteric teachings in the gospel. It is the climactic moment in the Gospel of John, the spiritual gospel, the last resurrection story. And though it may sound strange and distant, I tell you that it has everything to do with your life now. And my privilege, my joy, is to help you find the connections in this brief time together, to find how this ancient story, this message in a bottle, brings to you a wisdom that is practical within these images and these actions. In order to begin to see how it is related to you personally, we have to go back. You'll recall Jesus appeared, the doubting Thomas story. So I want you to think of a moment in your life, hopefully everyone here has had one, when you have had a glimpse of something more than ordinary.
When darkness covers the sun, there is still a light to save my soul. Send me an angel.
Has anybody here been flooded with a peace, a sense of protection, a sense of inspiration, a sense of forgiveness, something that was from God? If you haven't, may that blessing come your way. All of us are designed to receive that. And what happens after we've had such a special moment, starry opportunities, the philosopher calls them, what happens is that we become victims of falling back into routine. No matter how great the experience is, the law of gravitation psychologically takes us back to what we do, who we are, like nothing ever happened. And it seems lost to us. And that's exactly what we have here. What happens after the risen Lord appears in the flesh? Peter says, I'm going fishing. And in saying that, he is saying what we all say, which is, I want to go back to the normal routine. We need that normal routine. It's comfortable, it's familiar. It keeps us from wondering too much about what just happened. And sure enough, after this extraordinary moment, they go back to the regular life, the boring life, the dreary life, the unspiritual life. And you'll notice, because everything in this passage is deep teaching, they catch nothing. When we live our lives as though there were no God, but it's a comfortable place to live, we catch nothing. We just live our dreary lives. Sometimes there are better days than others, but they're pretty much the ordinary thing. When we were born to live in a higher place, our nobility as human beings is to have a joy that is the entry into the Master's joy. A joy of being alive, no matter what. We have that capability within us. Surely you folks have that, don't you? All of us can live in such a way that lifts us out of the dreary, mundane life that our culture sells us as what it means to live on this short journey. And so they go fishing and they catch nothing. Life is dreary. And then wonderful things happen. A stranger appears just as dawn is breaking through. A stranger on a shore. And that too is an image for you poet types, you artistic types. Because the spiritual is unknown, is strange to us. We can't recognize it right away. even the friends of Jesus could not recognize. And the stranger on the shore calls out. And here is a beautiful, beautiful revelation. What does he do? He says, children. Now you think about this. God through Christ calls you child. Children. Not, hey, you fishermen. Hey, you guys over there. Children. That right there, if you think about it, ought to melt your heart. Children. Beloved children, have you caught anything? How's your life going right now? And they have to admit that it's not going too well. And how often we must recognize that ourselves. And so the stranger says, cast your net to the other side. Instead of casting it, living this way, live this way. Instead of living in impatience and anger and self-interest, cast it to this side. In compassion and love and forgiveness and all those glorious ways we've been taught. Cast your net to the other side. Keep that in mind. Next time you're in a bad situation, in a bad moment with your loved one, let those words through the help of Holy Spirit come through. Cast your net to the other side. Get out of that place where nothing good can happen, where you can't catch any blessing. And notice that these men who don't know who he is yet obey anyway. And that's a powerful lesson. They obey. They agree to do that. These professional fishermen who know their business have heard from the unknown stranger to try it another way. Sometimes we learn from strangers as we do from children.
When darkness covers the sun, there is still a light to save my soul. Send me an angel.
They obey. Sometimes you have to just do it because you know that is the teaching. And obeying doesn't mean some military obligation. It comes from terrero. It comes from loving the teaching that has been given to you. So sometimes when you're dried up, when you can't find God, when you're in despair, obey anyway. Powerful teaching. As I've told you in the past, it'll cost you a lot with a psychiatrist to get the same thing. Here it's free. Obey anyway, even if it doesn't make any sense. As St. Augustine says, believe in order to understand. If you don't get off the dime, you're not going to find out. So try it another way. And so they cast their nets to the other side. And what happens? What an obvious, beautiful metaphor. The catch is so huge, they can't lift it up out of the water. And that is a message to every person here. Not that you're going to get a bunch of stuff, be covered with blessings and everything be fixed. But that image of abundance means that you can be given that deep peace, that joy of living, that contentment, that strength to go on that only Spirit can give you. That's worth more than any junk you can buy in this world. That's the catch, a full catch that you can't even lift up. It is so great.
Send me an angel.
Promise of the Lord, don't you understand? This is not a fantasy or a myth. This is spiritual wisdom. You can have your life filled with God's goodness by following the way. And upon this happening, of course, Brother John, the mystic one, whispers to Peter, "It is the Lord." Now this too is a teaching, friends. Listen now. Imagine if you could spend your days, every time something happens, you say, "It is the Lord." Certainly every time something beautiful happens, somebody is kind to you, somebody goes the extra mile for you, and you can say, "It is the Lord." Can you imagine the ecstasy in your being to know that through this human being you are being blessed by God? But it is also the Lord when it is hard times, because you can discover that out of tragedy, out of pain, can come good also. So if you dare to have the courage to say, "It is the Lord," if you trust that God is in it, something good will come. If you don't, the doors remain locked. I'll have to use a theological term here. It gets really weird. We find that Simon Peter put some clothes on because he was naked. Once again, no wonder people mock religion. If you take it literally, it's ridiculous. Unless someone wants to tell me why it's good to fish naked.
Send me an angel.
Please don't tell me if you know why. He is naked because he is stripped of faith. He's the man who denied his master and friend and Lord, the one who first recognized the Messiah and betrayed him at the high point of this drama, and wept like a baby and didn't know what to do. He is stripped of all that he has learned. And we're told he put on a cloak. Now, once again, if you're a rational, logical person, like so many out there, why would you put on a heavy cloak and jump in the water? Shouldn't you take it off and jump in the water? Put on something heavy, you're going to sink. So that once again, no sense to it, right? This is called decoding, recognizing how deep these holy scriptures are. And that's half the problem in this world, friends. Why so many have left Christianity. They don't realize that you got to go beyond the surface to discover the real message. What is this cloak he puts on? Faith. His faith returns.
When darkness covers the sun, there is still a light to save my soul. Send me an angel.
And because he has faith, he can go to Jesus. He can go to the spiritual. He can start again. Think about it for yourself. You who have backslid, you who have not experienced this, if you put on that cloak of belief, of hope in the goodness of God, you can go to it, to the source, and find true blessing for a lifetime. And then we read the other disciples come in the boat dragging that heavy net full of fish. And that again is a teaching. Friends, spirituality, being paradoxical, is both extremely intimate, because it's deep inside each of us, and extremely communal. We need each other. I'd rather be here than on vacation. I need you. We need each other. God needs us to be a community that in all its variety and differences can come together as one to the glory of God. And then true miracles will take place. And then this place will be here for years to come. And so they drag it in. And we see that Peter takes in the fish, and we read, full of large fish, 153 of them. There's a number. Now we can read it on the surface and try to figure that out. As I've told you before, for those who have total recall, you think the disciples were counting 1, 2, 3. How many you got there, Andrew? Okay, write it down. Who's got the notebook? And then 30 years later, we'll put it in a gospel. And then some folks in the 18th century said, well, that's all the fish that they thought existed at the time. Baloney. It doesn't take much, just Google it. Doesn't take much to discover that our Hebrew ancestors were brilliant spiritual people. They loved to think upon these things in ways we can't imagine. And as I've told you before, there were no numbers in Hebrew, so letters were numbers, which means that numbers represented names. And the 153 means something. Would you like to know what it means? Good. Would you like to know what it means? All right. Some people don't care. It means sons and daughters of the living God. Those who live in the shadow of God. Those who live in the protection of God. In other words, pulled out of the chaos of the ocean are the children of God who hunger for God. That is the work of the disciples, to bring in that hall of people who need to find God. That's a beautiful thing. Now, last time I went a step further, and I think I'll do it again because the Hebrews were so rich in their wisdom, and we have so forgotten it. So here's this number of what is brought in this resurrection story. And if you multiply it by 8, which is the number of regeneration and new life, Yeshua is 888. If you multiply it by 8, it's 1224. And that translates into the New Jerusalem. It translates into the word fish, the symbol of Christianity. It translates into a new humanity. So here we have in code the way in which Christ's mission is fulfilled, where each of us in our own way participates in bringing in out of the darkness and chaos, first of all, coming in ourselves, all those who hunger and thirst for relationship with the living God. Isn't that a beautiful resurrection story? Not for then, but for now. For it is eternal. It is truth that each of us can live by. May it be your truth today.